Wherever I end up after this, in whatever reality, all those moments between us were real, and they will always be ours. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 154 of Let's Talk Assassin's Creed. We are going off topic in this episode, but before we get into the topic, let's welcome our special guest, Lucy, aka FetchQuester. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
And it's great to have you here as well, and I really appreciate that you accepted the invite, because I was definitely keen on having more input and opinions on this one. Lucy, tell us a bit about yourself.
You say that now, James, but by the end of the show, you might think, "Oh God, why did I invite her?"
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you like an emotion check at the end.
Oh, great! Like those little devices that you have at the end of IKEA.
With the smiley face, frowny face.
Yeah.
Yes. No worries.
Well, I guess a brief summary would be I started playing video games when I was quite young and fascinated with the ability to do something interactive on a screen. This was kind of mesmerizing for me. And I started out with the LucasArts graphic adventures and the Apogee platformers because I am that old. And then when I got a little bit older, my brother bought me my first console, a PlayStation, and I started playing games like Civilization, a few sports games. And when I returned to PC gaming, it was RTS and city builders and things like that. And then in 2014, roughly, is when I started to play Skyrim, and that exploded my mind. I don't know how else to phrase it. It was just such an open, expansive game, and I fell in love with the fact that you can determine the direction of the narrative, the trajectory of your character arc, and you can become completely involved in a world which has its own conflicts and its own history. And that's when video games revealed themselves to me not just as an interactive form of entertainment, but as a powerful storytelling medium and a venue to ask philosophical questions and challenge your own belief systems. And ever since then, I've been really interested in video games and their capacity to do that. So that's kind of where I am today with that and exploring that.
And I think this topic kind of connects with all of that, because do you know what, Declan? This choice will have consequences.
A lot of consequences. Dun, 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 dun.
What are we talking about, Declan?
Before I tell you what we're talking about, I like the fact that Lucy just skated over the most important part of Skyrim, and that is nobody cares about the RPG or the dragons or anything. It is literally the biggest hoarding simulator in history. If it's not nailed down in Skyrim, you can steal it. It is. There is, you know how you can hold objects up in front of you?
Yes.
Apparently, if you hold a plate up in Riverrun and then run it a wall, it will glitch through the wall, and you can pick up a developer's chest, and it's been there forever.
Yes.
I just like how we could do. Nobody plays the game for like logical reasons. We steal stuff, we hoard it, and we run into walls for free loot.
And cheese.
Oh, and cheese, yes.
Yeah.
Why cheese?
Yeah.
Cheese.
Small confession: never played Skyrim.
My heart.
Oh.
Number one.
Yeah.
Okay. That's sacrilege.
Well, right, so this is a good question, right? How much of a game do you have to have played before you can say, I played that game? I have been on the wooden cart that trundles down the hill and the guy says, hey, you're awake, or whatever that opening monologue is. And I got to the point where it was character selection, which I think is it after the dragon attack or before the dragon attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't really work. It sounds really dumb. I was so confused that I just turned it off. I'd never played that kind of game before. I had, like you, Lucy, I'd only played RTS games. like the Total War series and various flight
Oh,
sims and
so
driving
great.
sims, and just yeah, my brain's like, no, don't get it. And I never went back to it. So I don't think I can really count that as playing Skyrim. So yeah, I will hand in my gamer card at the end of the recording.
Well, one game you have played, and it's the topic of today's episode, and I think I do
Wait,
feel
is that your segue?
that
That
is
is
my segue.
smooth.
Hey,
Oh,
That is smooth.
check that out.
Yeah.
I've been
You
doing this
just
show.
leveled up in speechcraft.
Yep.
After 3 years, you learn some tricks, especially when you talk to yourself for the first year. You learn how to segue your own. So yes, onto that segue. This week's topic is kind of a good one because every so often we will be doing these off-topic chats because I did actually want to start a new podcast on gaming outside of AC, but it's actually better to do these off-topic chats where we can do gaming talk outside of AC every 3 or 4 months. So that's why today's episode is about Life is Strange, one of the most inspirational, amazing, heartbreaking, and I locked myself in a dark closet after the second chapter of Life is Strange 1. And it literally, yeah, I don't think I would play Life is Strange 1 without a good cup of tea and a blanket.
Indeed. And there is a bit of a story here because when was it? It was last summer, and I can't remember how you and I were talking about it. Maybe I don't remember how the conversation came up, but you said to me, Declan, you need to play Life is Strange True Colors. And I think you might have also said to me, you need to play Tell Me Why, which is not part of the Life is Strange story, but it's another graphic adventure style game by Don't Nod. And I looked at True Colors and I saw that it was the most recent release in a quite a long franchise. So I thought, all right, I'm definitely I'd reached the end of my Assassin's Creed marathon, and I was definitely in the market for trying new types of games. And I think this is still the case on Steam. You can get episode 1 of Life is Strange, the original game, for free.
Mm.
So I thought, all right, I'll add that to my Steam library and come back to it later. And my mind is fuzzy. I probably started playing it in October last year, and I have to say, I was completely hooked. I was fascinated by the game. I mean, we normally talk about assassins leaping off of roofs and stabbing Templars, and this is as far from that as a game can be, really. And within sort of an hour or even less than that, I was fascinated by we should put a spoiler warning here. We are going to be spoiling stories, mechanics, characters for all of the games in this franchise. I was fascinated by the time rewind mechanic, the way that you can change how you interact with people and explore. Yeah, I was completely hooked, and I played that game. As soon as I finished episode 1, I went and bought the other 5 because it's an episodic game. So at the time it was released a few months apart, I think, each episode. But of course, I went and bought them all. I played that game obsessively over a couple of weeks, and yeah, I was absolutely engrossed and hooked. And then in the Steam sale end of last year, I went and added the rest of the franchise to my library. So it's all your fault, Declan, basically. Yeah.
I take pride in this, and I actually know why it came about. It came about because I wanted to do a topic on how Tell Me Why could influence Assassin's Creed, which we'll get to that later on. But also, why could Assassin's Creed tell a really deep narrative story in the same way as Life is Strange? Like, that was my whole point. Could Assassin's Creed do this same thing and just tell a really strong narrative story? Probably not, but because Life is Strange will break your heart.
It will. It absolutely will. Do you want to give us like the story summary, or maybe even just a character summary of the protagonist that we play as, Lucy?
Oh, Max Caulfield
Mm.
in Life is Strange. Well, I probably should tell everyone that I've not actually played the full game. I have watched a playthrough of the full game, so I am familiar with what happens. I've never really thought about Max as a character that I can relate to a lot. She's someone who is haunted by inaction. That's the best way that I can describe her. She's someone who is passive and neutral. And I suppose that a lot of what culminates in Life is Strange is the result of this passivity, right? She doesn't take action when she should. And this plays into her relationship with Chloe. Um, she's an artistic person. She connects very deeply with the world around her. She's very reflective. She's an overthinker. And maybe she has a parallel with
Yes.
Hamlet in that she does procrastinate because she feels so weighed down by the gravity of things around her. I don't know if that's if you would agree with that summary of her character. I hope I haven't been too reductive towards her because she's a great person as well. She's just like a lot of the Life is Strange characters, coming to terms with the world around her and adjusting to different environments when she's going through a pretty vulnerable time of her life, and considering the kinds of situations she faces in the games, or in that particular game, obviously, it's extremely daunting. So anyone who
Mm,
can endure that and come out of it, especially at that age, that's quite commendable, I think.
I I think I enjoyed. I think what hooked me on the game was she's a rather socially awkward, introverted
Mm.
nerd, and that was me as a as a a late teenager. So I was like, yeah, I can be this person. I see the world the way she sees the world.
Mm.
I found the inner monologue just fascinating. You know, the
Yes.
constant exploration, and it's a game that encourages you to walk it, and because you just walk. There's no action, but there is, but you don't. You just walk everywhere, um, and you can interact with so many objects. There's a story behind everything. As you say, she's constantly analyzing and reflecting um, on the world around her. Um, and that first chapter builds up to an event with, as you say, with her childhood friend Chloe. Gotta say,
Yeah.
Chloe Price, what a pillar of
Oh.
strength! Everything she has
Oh
been through,
gosh.
um,
Hmm.
especially which you see more of that in the next game in the series, which is called Before the Storm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, she's a bit of a legend. I gotta say, Chloe is. Um,
She is.
but yeah, I was hooked by this by the character, by the monologue. Now, what's interesting, and I've read this criticism in subsequent reviews, is that the game was written by middle-aged men, and it's a
Really?
game about yes, it's a game about teenagers, and so apparently, I don't know, I haven't been a teenager for a long time, but it's a story about two late teen women. Um, so I don't know whether the dialogue might come across as cringy or incorrect
Yeah.
for some players. For me, it was fine, but it's certainly a criticism or an angle that's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Um, Damn it, I forgot on my point on where I was going. But I suppose I'll just conclude by saying that I found the dialogue, the characters, the way the stories were told, because you can interact with the characters and have repeat conversations, and you can go down many different branches of conversation. Um, I
Yeah.
found it just fantastic. Um, I want to talk very briefly about the watercolor art style as well.
Mm.
Um, there's a phrase I think of often when I'm seeing games that have really interesting art styles. I don't know if it's a quote from somewhere, but maybe it is. There used to be a YouTube channel which did video essays about filmmaking called Every Frame a Painting. It's not been active for many years, but all their content is still available. It's fantastic. But this is a game that reminds me of that phrase. Every frame is a painting. The world is so beautiful, and it's
Yeah.
very peaceful. At least early on, before the drama kicks off. It really feels like a game where you could just walk and listen to the ambient sounds, watch the sunlight,
Mm.
look at the birds flying overhead. It could almost be what's the right word? Almost meditative.
Yes.
just walking around and exploring. But yeah, the drama soon kicks in, and I want to go right to the end for both of you.
Oh
Um,
God.
the story sort of involves the disappearance of a character called Rachel Amber. It reunites Max and Chloe, who were childhood friends, and they resolve to work together and help each other and find out what happened to Rachel. And the game has this undercurrent of, as Max explores her time rewind ability, the more she uses it, the more she affects the world around her. And we start to go down some very dark kind of branches, if you like, in the timeline as we see her consequences of her actions and her
Yeah.
decisions, or our decisions. What I'm curious for you both at the end is, you're given a choice. Now, we've already done a spoiler warning, so we're getting into it. You're given a choice to resolve the storm that you've created. Do you sacrifice the town or do you sacrifice Chloe? What did you, Declan, first, what did you choose?
So, this is actually a hard question for me to answer because I've actually 100%ed Life is Strange. I chose
Oh,
both
so you've,
answers
nice. Okay. I've
and
not gone
got,
back. See, I've just done it once. Go on.
but I chose to save Chloe first
Okay.
because of the philosophical debate where if you're on a runaway train and you could either save everyone on board by hitting one person, or you could avoid that one person and everyone on the train dies. So it's that argument what works, and I valued at that point Chloe's life more than the town. So,
Great.
so it was a sacrifice for a town for one life, because
Yeah.
in my philosophical argument, a lot of the people in town have lived and they've got memories and stories to tell, whereas Chloe never did. She still had so many stories to tell, so she deserved to have those stories to be told.
Okay.
And then I chose
Wow.
the other option, and sorry to say, but I think the other option actually works more for the character than saving
Yeah.
Chloe, because you actually see a butterfly on Chloe's coffin,
Oh.
and it really ties that whole narrative of the butterflies, and it actually feels more impactful and more that everything you do, you cannot beat time. Everything has to end, and that just hits so hard.
Mm.
Mm.
What did you
Wow.
choose, Lucy?
I love
Oh,
Declan's
you haven't got to
explanation,
the
by the
end,
way.
have you? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I know the ending.
Yeah.
I watched the ending and quaked and shook and had tears streaming down my face for a few hours after. I love the argument that Declan made because it is the trolley problem, and this problem comes out of the ether every every few months in some form of medium, and it's being constantly asked, and it's obviously um, problematic because it's a very simplified view of what is comprised of several different aspects. Like we ask about the value of the people who live in the town, and like Declan said, they've had a chance to live their life. We can ask about the value of Chloe, who perhaps now that her character has reached a kind of resolution, she's someone who could return to STEM, because she was quite prolific in chemistry, I think. And maybe we
Was.
ask, what has the world lost when we take someone like Chloe out of the world? And that's not just because of her academic and intellectual abilities, but she's someone who has a lot of wisdom as well. But I think, again, like Declan said, it does fit into the narrative um, a little bit more smoothly when we do sacrifice Chloe, sadly. And I do have trouble with that argument because it's not that simple. A consequentialist or a utilitarian would say it's the greater good to do this, but we're still weighing up the value of life. And I think a lot of people would prefer to actually sacrifice Max, but maybe that's too easy.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Sacrificing Max, in my opinion, would be the not to sound harsh, but it's like the get out of free jail card.
Yeah,
If
yeah. Exactly.
It, by saying, by no offense to people who debate the story and everything, but if someone says if Max was not in the picture, then none of it would happen. But then that takes away the whole thing that Ruby was lost. It was Max and Chloe together that
Yes.
Chloe got closure because Chloe loved her. So Chloe got closure. Chloe knew stuff. And it's effective by
Yes.
saying if Max wasn't there, blah, blah, blah. You then deprive Chloe of so much life and so many
Yeah.
memories she would never have gotten. And I think that's what makes the final choice of sacrificing Chloe most heartrending because every memory you've made will always live with Max in some form of timeline, but it will never live for Chloe. I think that's why taking Max out of the equation is never a good answer because Max needs to grow. She has these
Yeah.
abilities, but she needs to grow in herself that she cannot bend time to fit every whim because time will eventually catch up to her. So it's a good lesson
Yes.
for her to know that she can't play God.
And grow as a character as well, because she's learning that inaction is a form of action. You have to take a stance. And I know James has talked about this before, Max ghosting Chloe at a very difficult time in her life. It's something
Yes.
that is almost unforgivable. I can sort of understand why she does it. She's adjusting to a new life and probably feels guilt about leaving Chloe, so she shuts down before she's able to address what Chloe is going through. But I think, like a lot of the Life is Strange games, they're taking a superpower and they're using it as a kind of conduit for emotional growth and character growth. And it's really what we do with that superpower and how we have a relationship between the other characters in the story regarding that superpower that counts. Whether we use it for good, whether we let others exploit it, which we see in Life is Strange too. So we do see Max reach a very pivotal point in her life by the end of the game, which is kind of the point, as well as celebrating a beautiful love story between what you could consider soulmates, maybe platonic or sapphic. It doesn't matter. They're both clearly people who were meant to be in each other's lives.
Yeah. I don't have any intelligent follow up to that.
I
I,
may
What are
have
you talking about,
opened.
James?
no, I'm just thinking through what you've both said, and yeah, um, it's funny when I got to the end that the game is asking you to make a choice or asking Max to make a choice,
Yeah.
um, and let me think this through. One thought I've had is if you played Before the Storm first. Before the Storm it tells a prequel story. I wonder how you'd feel about the characters, especially Max.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but to go back to Life is Strange, I felt like the game was nudging you towards. I don't know actually. So even now, I'm doubting my thought process. I think about halfway through, I decided that my goal as Max was to protect Chloe Price, to save Chloe Price.
Mm,
Um, Not that Max leaving the because Max had left the town a number of years before and kind of dropped contact, and Chloe was badly affected by that. We see that a lot explored in Before the Storm. Um, but that I think I set that as my goal. Um, I perhaps motivated by a desire to kind of what's the right word atone for walking away.
yeah.
Um, and what's interesting is when you get that final choice, I did, and it's interesting because I think the when you finish each episode, you get a page with all of your choices, and then you
Yeah.
get like all of the players' choices, so you can see okay, 30% pick this, but you picked the other, or whatever, which I find fascinating. And I
Yeah.
think that final choice is very finely balanced. I think it's something like 49-51 or something like that,
Mm,
which probably means they did a very good job of providing balanced choices and a hard decision.
yeah.
But I felt that the option to Sacrifice the Town was easier because most of the people you don't have any personal connection to them, apart from a few. Joyce. Sadly, I didn't have a connection to Kate because by then I'd failed to save Kate. It's Kate Marsh, isn't it? Which was shocking. I did not think that was going to go that way, but anyway. So I felt like it was a relatively easy decision, but I suppose that's, like you said a moment ago, Lucy, that's the point of the decision, which is, do you choose the personal choice that matters to your heart, or do you choose the logical choice that matters to your head? There's probably no. Is there a right answer? Even now, I don't know. And that's the great thing about the game and the way it's structured. Is it got me thinking constantly. Um, how did you reconsider your opinions of Max and Chloe after playing Before the Storm?
Is that question directed to me or to Declan? Sorry.
Either of you, take it, Lucy. Yeah.
um, yeah, so in relation to Before the Storm, I definitely developed a deeper sympathy towards Chloe. I think that
Mm,
game gave us, and I thought it was beautiful. The way the game was constructed was amazing, and some of the most beautiful moments in the Life is Strange series, I think, is in Before the Storm. And I think we see a lot of behavioral tendencies in Chloe in Life is Strange that actually come from Rachel Amber in Before the Storm, and we see two vulnerable people who, a lot of their patterns are almost trauma responses. We see them pushing boundaries because life is pushed against them. So they're challenging the circumstances around them and trying to deal and come to terms with what's happening to them, even though they have a very different backgrounds. So I think being able to see that, I absolutely love Chloe. I don't necessarily
same.
condone everything that she does. I feel like she takes Max for a little bit of a ride and pushes her, but Chloe is one of those people, and I think this especially comes to light in Life is Strange, who has the wisdom, partly through some of the terrible things that she's endured, to realize that people are human and that they make mistakes. And even though what Max did to her was unforgivable, she realizes that life is short and precious, and she isn't willing to throw that love away. And she has this really big heart, and that's what helps them reunite. And to have that kind of wisdom and understanding and to let go of that bitterness is such a mature thing to do. It's something that a lot of so-called adults struggle with, myself
Yeah.
included.
Yeah.
um yeah, I think I think Chloe is the supernatural one, to be honest.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, I don't have any intelligent words to say other than she's awesome.
She is awesome. She's hella
Yeah,
awesome.
she is hella awesome. Yeah, and you know that's a very good point we should just make, which is I forget, you can look it up on Wikipedia, the sort of the production notes, but Ashley Birch voiced Chloe in the first game, Life is Strange.
Mm,
She wasn't available. I guess it was a scheduling conflict to voice Chloe in Before the Storm, and I thought that would be a problem, but actually it wasn't. The voice actor, and I'm afraid I don't know her name, she just felt natural. It just felt like Chloe, even though it's a slightly different voice to Ashley Birch. She did a
yeah,
fantastic job,
she did.
filling the shoes of a very accomplished voice actor with a very popular character. Um, I thought that was excellent.
It was. I
One of
think.
my sorry, go on, Lucy, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, I think that in Before the Storm, if we've played it as a prequel, if we've played it after our experience with Life is Strange, we know what's coming, which it adds a bit of an off taste to it. But we get to feel at home with Chloe in a way. We do get to understand her better, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah, agreed. Did you play Before the Storm, Declan?
I haven't. No, it's on my list.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. There are there are just some. Do you know it's funny? the art style is very simplistic. As I said earlier, it's got this watercolor feel to it. The character models are very, very simple. I guess you'd say they're quite a low polygon count or something fancy like that. But what's fascinating about the game is they're still so expressive. I don't know whether they're mocapped, but then kind of applied over a very simple mesh, or whether they're hand animated. But in Before the Storm, Chloe, despite the way the like I said, despite the simpler art style, she's so expressive. You can see her
Yeah.
nervousness. Like she wrings her hands when she's going into nervous situations. She's so expressive with her eyes, her mouth. It's a really clever trick. I don't want to say trick because that undermines all the hard work of the animators, but it's genuinely fantastic that this game with this very simple style can express all this emotion visually rather than just through conversation. My favorite scene is I don't know if you'll remember this scene. It's just one line. There's a Shakespeare play being put on at the high school,
Yes.
and through a sequence of events, Chloe is asked. The producer says, he says something like, "Chloe, what would you say if I told you that the entire weight of this production depends on you stepping in at zero notice?" And she goes, "I'd say you're super fucked," and it's just brilliant. I love the fact she tells it like it is. But she's in Life is Strange. She's this really confident, let's get stuff done. But she's quite vulnerable and nervous
Yeah.
in Before the Storm, and it would be kind of nice to replay them in order and get that
Yeah.
chronological experience. I don't know if I'll go back to it, if I'm honest, because there's some hard stuff in there, some hard
Yeah.
decisions and hard scenes and hard conversations. Um, but it would be kind of interesting to do that experiment if you could kind of reset your memory and then play them again, as though it was the first time. That would be a good experiment.
Stream it, James.
That's
Put your audience in therapy.
well, yeah. I mean, it's not
That's
a
just
bad
evil.
idea. Although I'm only halfway through A Plague Tale: Innocence, and I don't want to say the details yet because we're not able to go public. But I'm currently working on another project, which um, means I won't be streaming for a few more weeks yet, or at least not going back to Plague Tale. But I do enjoy streaming. I'm really enjoying replaying Plague Tale: Innocence. I'll definitely move on to Plague Tale: Requiem after that. But at the rate that I stream, that's about 6 months. So it would be nice to go back to Life is Strange at some point.
So I have a question then. I haven't read them, but I know of them and I disagree with them. But we've talked a little bit about the ending of Life is Strange 1. Now, do any of you feel that the developers, Square Enix, creating a comic where they set a canonical timeline of the town being destroyed kind of undermines the ending because it is a 21 comic series, I believe, all set with Chloe and Max after the town is destroyed. And apparently that is like a canon timeline. They don't say it's a canon ending, they say it's a canon timeline. But doesn't it kind of undermine the two choices if there's a 21 comic series about the town being destroyed?
So I know there's comics. I didn't realize they actually sort of picked a side, if you like, between the two decisions. So if you read the comics, they're assuming that you picked Chloe.
Yeah, so the comics is
Okay.
basically Max and Chloe's life together after the events of the town being destroyed. And that
Right.
is their canonical timeline of events after the town's being destroyed. And they do class it as canonical timeline. They don't class it
Right.
as canonical ending. But it undermines the ending, in my opinion. Because what's the point of making two choices if one choice is going to have a bigger outcome than the other? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where. I mean, how do you have a consistent universe if the player can make choices like that? I don't think you can square that circle, can you? Really?
Maybe you can.
Oh, go on.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I think I better preface that, but I think time is just one of those nebulous concepts where we're debating whether we've created it or whether we've given a name to something that actually does exist. But I think if I mean I'd have to read the comics before I could say that. And I think it's nice to have that option because everyone is curious about what would it be like if Chloe and Max could run off together into the sunset? I think that's something we'd all love to learn about. But
Mm.
it's the ultimate renegade tale in a way. But I think with time, if you think of time as linear, then it is problematic. But the fact that they specify it's another timeline, an alternate timeline, I think that's its saving grace, perhaps. But again, I'd actually have to read it. It depends how it's done. Um, I don't think there's necessarily, and playing video games has taught me this. I don't think there's necessarily one definite path that you could take in your lifetime. And I'm trying to think of how to sum this up and have it make sense. But I think there's an argument that, and I'm hopefully people will correct me on this. Um, a universe is full of infinite possibilities, right? A universe in general, not just in the video game. And if anything is possible, at some point you're going to have a parallel or alternate universe that kind of corresponds to the one that we're in. Um, so there's another Lucy somewhere who's probably uh, asleep with her cat on her lap right now, or there's Declan reading his Shakespeare, and there's and there's James troubling people on Twitter like like you love to do in
Ah,
that other universe. But do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's hard because we always want to have a definitive ending that gives us closure and makes us feel satisfied, but it's not always that clean cut. I think Life is Strange shows us that it's really the content of the path that we take that's important, perhaps, maybe. I mean, I don't really like saying that because it's choices and consequences, so obviously the consequences have to count for something.
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. I think I think for me, it was more the case of when I heard about that comic. I know I'm not being disrespectful because I think it's a great idea. I kind of felt like that was like the easiest story to follow. For me, I would have loved to see a story where Max remembers that timeline with Chloe and the fact that she didn't follow that timeline and she sacrificed Chloe, and a whole story of her trying to figure out if she can rip time again and go back and make the decision again. And I think having a story where Chloe and Max keep bonding and bonding and bonding after the town was destroyed is great. I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing, but it's an easy story to tell. But a story where
Mm,
Max has to remember everything, because a lot of comments I've had about the story is always about Chloe and Chloe's character, but not a lot of people focus on Max. The fact of Max saw a lot, and did she remember that timeline if she sacrificed Chloe? Because if she did, that's hard. She remembered
yeah.
Lucy falling. She remembered every argument, every fight, every decision she went wrong. And she remembers that timeline. And I just think a story following onto that would have been more impactful because it would see that she has to live a life knowing that she failed and she couldn't go
Mm,
back in time and fix it.
yeah.
But I'm evil. I like to suffer a little bit more. I just want to suffer a little bit more. Like these Telltale game style games are my favorite. I've played a lot over the years, and I just like to get every inch so I can suffer a little bit more. Don't get me started to try to become human. That is a
Oh
sore
my
topic
god.
in my household. I'm in
Oh, what
trouble
an
on that one.
amazing game. What
It
an
is,
amazing
but
game.
my girlfriend doesn't like me with it though. I don't know this is off topic, but
wait, with which one, Declan?
Detroit Become Human.
Ah,
It's
I've
so good.
again a game I've started but not
That's so good.
finished. Gone through. Yeah.
Me
Okay.
and my girlfriend played it together because we both like them, and she got like it narrowed to the good ending. So I'm not going to spoil anything. I came in and I made a choice. I fudged all her hard work up, and I
Oh,
accidentally got that ending. I wasn't bothered because I wanted 100% the game and get every ending. She wasn't happy, and I'll take the blame. I messed it up, but I just like to get every ending. I want to know every detail because it's just like a book. I want to know every inch,
yeah.
and that's what Life is Strange gives you, like every inch.
Hmm.
And even though Life is Strange 1 is great, and I've not played 2, but I've seen um, Let's Play a bit. Life is Strange 2 is good. I'm going to have to say True Colors is the best.
Oh,
All
2
right.
is so good, Declan. You've got to play it. It's amazing.
It's on my list. There's a lot
Should
on
we
my
should we
list.
should we talk two or shall we talk True Colors next? See, I've played through Captain Spirit, which is like a intro, isn't it, to Life is
Yep,
Strange 2. Um, Again, that's a great little story. Um, and
it
there's
is.
a lot of storytelling in there. It's kind of, what's the right word? It's a marvel of efficient storytelling and
Yep,
what you can do with just a few lines of dialogue, some interactable objects. Obviously the sort of the set design, for want of a better word, of the house. I forget the boy's name. That's bad, isn't it? That the boy moves around in.
was it
It's a wonderful,
Chris?
but I can't remember. That's
I
really
think it's
bad, isn't it?
Danielle, isn't it? Can't
Daniel's
remember.
the little brother in the
Oh, yeah.
Diaz brothers duo.
I got to look at Chris Erickson. Yes, well done. Yeah, um, that's a fantastic little intro. But that's obviously the warm up to Life is Strange 2. So Lucy, Life is Strange 2. Why is it great?
Oh gosh, where do we start with that? um, I think for me, and this is obviously speaking as someone who has never been subject to the kind of discrimination that Daniel and Sean have been subject to um, in the United States, which of course is racism. And they're on the run. So a lot of the things that happen to them, they don't really have much of a choice, even though you make a choice as the player in the game. But if if you can look at the positive aspect of that, it's the fact that it draws on that theme of the American journey that's interconnected with nature, and you have this tension between nature and survival, and then you have other parts of the game where it's living within nature, self discovery in nature, character growth in nature, and it's the coming of age story, right? The I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the Bildungsroman, the
Ah, yes.
spiritual awakening, and I've always been drawn to that. I love Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and we all like to romanticize that a little bit. And I think there are lots of things I love about it, but what I really like about Life is Strange too is the fact that it offers an alternative to the American dream, which of course has failed a lot of people. And there are a few places you can go to and actually live in that are off the grid. And it shows a completely different way of life, which is individualistic, which does follow the themes of self reliance that have long been a part of American literary culture, obviously, with Native Americans as well, in terms of living off of the land, but also with Emerson and Thoreau. So that's played on quite a bit. But there's this huge emphasis on community too. So, this idea that in order to live in these off the grid communities, you have to build a strong relationship with your neighbor. You have to be there for each other. You have to be thrifty and intuitive and inventive. And the fact that it presents this kind of way of life for people that long for this lifestyle, or for people that feel like they've been pushed into that lifestyle, which, if you've watched Nomadland or read the book, you'll see that a lot of the times it's because the industries that people worked in have failed them, and the housing market, of course, has crashed, and so on. A lot of these people are gravitating towards this lifestyle and just finding a different mentality and different way of living. And it shows Sean and Daniel that this type of life is open to them, which really comes into focus at the end of the game when the biggest decisions are made. And that's what I really respected about this. Um, the other Life is Strange games are great, but we don't really have a chance to experience those diverse communities within those games. And I think that's what stuck out to me the most. And also the theme of forgiveness and abandonment, where they're coming to terms with the fact that their mother left them. And even though that's unforgivable, she does come good for them in the end. You understand why she left. You understood that she had a soul that called for a different life, and she followed that calling because she couldn't pigeonhole herself into the American dream again. So even though she neglected her duty as a mother, which should have come first, you can understand that uh, what she was doing when she made that decision. And I think that added a lot of interesting layers to the story and made it really fascinating for me.
I can't wait to play it now. I was going
Oh,
to play
you've
it
got
anyway.
to.
I was gonna. So it's two and True Colors that I haven't played, and I own them, and I just have a long backlog. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm fascinated.
It's so
One
heart wrenching.
question. That was my question, Lucy. Life is Strange ripped my heart out.
Mm,
Before the Storm was kind of different, but I think you felt the emotional impact because you knew where the story was going because it's a prequel. Um, Captain Spirit didn't have quite the same. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't like a really visceral kind of oh my god. It was this constant undercurrent of this is unsettling. Something here is not
yes,
right. The
very much.
relationship is not right. Obviously, the father is he's got his alcoholism issues, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't like it was yeah, it was a hidden threat, if you like. It sounds like Life is Strange 2 is more on that level of it's going to rip my heart out again.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
all right.
sorry.
Yeah, I am looking forward to playing it, but yes, I am forewarned now by how the Don't Nod writers go about their business of ripping my heart out. So all good, all good.
I think
Be
it
careful
will.
of true colours then.
Well, that was my next question, Declan. Is True Colors going to rip my heart out again?
Lucy, I don't know if you will agree, but I personally feel True Colours will rip your heart out worse than the
Ooh,
first game, in my opinion.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Spicy.
What's your reasoning behind that?
let's unpack that, Declan. Let's go.
Let's unpack it. Let's get Declan in trouble. So, it's not. I think it's because of Alex Chen's powers. They are
Mm,
what make it more impactful. So, with Max's powers, it's time travel, it's supernatural. It's no offense, but it's like a sci-fi trope
yeah.
to alter time, and that doesn't take away from the story or anything. It's just something I noticed. Whereas Alex Chen's powers is realistic and grounded because it's just a heightened sense of empathy. Every
Yeah.
human can be empathetic, and the fact of the whole story is about a loss that she faces, and she uncovers the story by sensing other people's emotions and the life and the stories in their emotions. That kind of hit home more for me because there's no way that that type of story can be false. No way that story can be wrong. To know
Mm,
someone's emotions and to see how they're suffering through emotions is really well done. And there is the one that sticks in my head the most is when you've when you go after one person that you don't like and you blame him for the incident and you latch onto his emotions. You see people looking at you. You see the security cameras all pointed at him because that was his fear, his paranoia, and she could
yeah.
feel that in herself, and that felt so heartbreaking that she had all this anger to this one person, but he was suffering from paranoia.
Yeah.
He was actually in as much pain as she was, and with Max's story, of Rewind in Time, that story is very much about Max and Chloe, the pain them two have. But with Alex Chen's sensing other people's emotions, she is literally seeing everyone else suffer and everyone else's grief, everyone else's anger. And that is overwhelming. And I think that's what kind of broke my heart, that she can't. She tells her brother's best friend about it, but I think he just laughed it off because it's something you can't sense, but she has to live with that. And she gets
Yeah.
impacted on other people's emotions. And that kind of just hit me more than Life is Strange 1 for some weird reason.
Yeah. I get that for sure.
So actually, that's a nice little segue. Each game gives us, the player, like a unique mechanic. Let's say Max develops or uncovers that she has this ability to rewind time just for a minute or two, so she can make different choices and explore those choices. Um, Before the storm, I have to say I really enjoyed this, and
Yeah.
it was perfect for Chloe. She gets you have a little gameplay mechanic called back talk, where Chloe can basically be sassy as hell and try to win arguments that get her, should we say, advantages in the plot to move the story in certain ways. And I found that brilliant, especially the back talk sort of challenges where you couldn't lose. You had to get 4 right answers in a row, or four right responses, I should say, to move the conversation in the right direction, to win the argument, to progress. Captain Spirit, remind me, was there a, I don't think there was there a oh no, he uses his imagination, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's the little boy's walking around his house, and then there's certain interactions where he pretends to be Captain Spirit, and the game opens with him using quote unquote magical powers, but then you realize it's just his imagination, and it's just adorable,
Yeah.
but also heartbreaking in that subtle, understated way. What's the special ability, special mechanic in Life is Strange 2?
Telekinesis.
Oh, right, okay,
And it's the
and
little brother.
okay.
So
And that
you're
can alter the plot, or that can alter what people do around you. I'm fascinated how that is used. I need to play the game. Obviously, I'm going to play the game, but just humour me.
yeah, it absolutely does. Because you're not the one with the powers. You're acting as a mentor and a father figure, as well as older brother. And you're trying to not only teach Daniel, who is, oh, I can't remember how old he is exactly. He's quite young. And he's at an age where you're trying to teach him moral concepts, how to be a good person, basically, in very difficult circumstances because you're on the run. And there's a fine line between that and doing what you can to survive. And, venturing into more criminal ways to survive. Um, you're trying to manage that, and you're trying to manage the fact that this young boy has this massive power that is extremely difficult to contain. It's almost like a Star Wars story in a way. And you have to watch out for people exploiting him, which they do. So it's I would say it's central in a lot of ways to the relationship between Sean and Daniel and their relationship with the rest of the world around them.
All right, fascinating. I like what you said there, which is that's the power, or that's the unique item in the game, but it's not you, the player, that controls it, or at least not directly. I can't wait. You had my attention. Now you have my interest. Um, and tell me, Declan, then, True Colors. What is Alex's ability? It's something to do with emotions.
Yeah, it's like a heightened sense of empathy. She can latch onto other people's emotions. She calls it a curse, but she can like manipulate some of the emotions as well. So there is a scene where someone gets very angry at her brother, and she gets absorbed by her brother's anger and becomes angry herself. So she
Yeah.
can't really control the ability, but the ability itself kind of opens up some really heartbreaking moments. There's where you latch onto a shopkeeper's emotional
Oh,
sadness because she's developing
yeah.
dementia,
Oh
and
Oh,
god,
damn.
yeah.
as you latch onto her emotion, you see like you have to solve like what's going on. So she's got like a list missing and something else she needs to remember. So you're trying to remember for her to help her,
Oh, my
and you
God.
just see the whole world is breaking down. Like pictures are starting to fade, and it's so heartbreaking because she can see that and no one else can. So she can feel that sadness, and she has to put up with it. And I think that makes her one of the strongest characters because if you have this curse where you're influenced by everyone's emotions, then how are you going to survive? Because everyone's got an emotion. Someday she's going to be happy, which is great, but there's a lot of times where there is sadness and she gets swept up in it, and it is kind of heartbreaking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That game broke me and still breaks me. But I mean, it breaks you more, in my opinion, James, because it's not episodic. It's
Oh, it's not.
it's
Okay.
one whole game. You don't have to download little bits. It's one whole game, and because it's not episodic, you don't get that break
Mm,
between stories, so you can just
mm.
play it for hours, and then after a while, you realize you're under the bed with some Haagen Dazs and a cup of tea.
Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we play these games,
Why
eh?
would you
Ugh.
do?
Go on, Lucy. You wanted to say something. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question for Declan
Mm.
before we move on. And if you look at the construction of the previous Life is Strange games, there's a lot of different themes going on. But I felt that Life is Strange True Colors is when the storytellers decided that we can have a good, happy ending where there's a resolution to conflicts that emphasizes healing. Um, we don't really get um, endings in the other games that leave us feeling happy, but in True Colors, I think if you especially take the relationship between Steph, that's Steph from the first game, James,
I
and
wanted to check this. Is because Steph is in Before the
yeah,
Storm. Is she in Life is
yes,
Strange as well?
in True Colors, yeah, and you can
Oh,
actually
damn.
have a relationship with her, and if you play, I think it's called Wavelengths.
Ah,
You
yeah.
actually have a chance to experience some of Steph's process of going through the trauma, because that's that's when obviously she's trying to come to terms with the fact that Arcadia Bay has been destroyed. And I think what's really beautiful about it is that two broken people, because Alex has had a really rough life as well, can find solace in each other and heal with each other and support each other. And the fact that they find a family within Haven Springs. And you can also choose to leave at the end of the game. But again, you get a sense that that's if you want to go towards something as opposed to running from something. And I just wondered what Declan's thoughts on that were, because I felt like they actually wanted to give us a reason to sleep well at night after putting us through hell in the previous games.
I think, personally, I think it wouldn't make sense for Alex to have a bad ending because how I've always pictured Life is Strange from listening to two and playing one. With one, it's trying to like save Chloe in that whole moral dilemma. Do you save Chloe or do you save the town? But with Alex's dilemma, it was more of can Alex survive? The whole it's a weird thing to look at, so I'm probably going wrong. But Alex can't control her powers. She can feel everyone's emotions, and she feels isolated from the world because she doesn't deserve to be near anyone because she can't control abilities. And one of the most prominent scenes that highlights this is when she rescues the little boy. You know, he says, "Oh, there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
monster, there's a monster," and it really hits home that she latches onto his fear and she sees that monster, and that's hard. You know, there's nothing there. There's no monster. She doesn't believe in it, but she has to for someone else to save them. And that, if they then give you like an option that was like really negative, it was like to me, what's the point? She's gone through so much hell. She's alone in a strange town. Nobody wants her. Every time someone's upset, she can be wrecked by their emotions. Every time someone's angry, she can be wrecked emotions. So she has to live a life dealing with everyone's emotions and her own. To say something evil at the end to make it break down more would just be like,
Yeah.
do you hate Alex? Do you actually hate Alex at this point? And for me, it was just like she needed a happy ending. She needed somewhere she can grow and going forward. So if she leaves, she's working towards. It's kind of like she's working towards getting back into society. To
Yeah.
in Colorado Springs, it's a village. You can easily learn to deal with everyone's emotions there, but in a city where everyone's gonna be angry at car traffic, shopping, can she really go on that alone? And I don't think she could. She
Mm.
couldn't. I think she would struggle. So she needs some sort of happy ending. She needs. She needs something. That poor woman. Oh my god. To
Yeah,
see
no
someone,
kidding.
a world, someone's dementia fall down from their own perspective must have been heartbreaking for her. To have to like feel that childhood's primal fear of a monster in the dark and to feel that yourself as an adult must have hurt her. Because I've got kids of my own and I think I would feel terrible for them if they had a fear. But if I could feel their emotion myself, I think I'd probably break down. I'm surprised she survived so long, bless her.
She's stronger than she gave herself credit for. I think that's one of the big realizations.
I agree, and I think like she went to her brother because she felt like she had no other family, and then losing her brother, it was like whole thing of ha, you've got no family, but she was wrong. A family is
Mm.
not blood. A family is not just something that you have to be with. A family could be a community, and that
Yeah.
town became her family, and that's a very important fact that resonated with me because I have really bad vibes with my family, but
Oh,
I've grown a family from friends, and that's why I resonate with Alex that you don't need blood to be a family.
yeah.
You can just be a family of people who treat you with kindness.
Family soul bound, I think.
I agree. I think we need a cup of tea after this podcast. For life is strange, bringing up memories. Don't play the games.
I
James,
was
save me.
Well, I'm going to make a non-serious point, and then I'm going to make a serious point. So, at the risk of ruining the tone, I would quite like Alex's abilities just for a little while, so I could know what my dog is thinking and feeling. That would be quite
Yes!
handy. I want to know what's his favourite toy, where's his favourite
Oh,
walk.
that's
You
so
know,
wholesome.
um, does does
I
he
would love
like
that.
having his tummy scratched more, or his ears scratched more? You know, that's what I want to know. So, if I could have that
Oh,
ability in a limited way, that would be nice. Um, but yeah, knowing other people's feelings just sounds like a nightmare. But on that point, so you mentioned earlier, and we've just come back to it about there's a part in True Color's story where Alex, I don't know how to describe it, having not seen it myself, but she has the feelings or whatever, or has a connection to someone with dementia, and that reminded me of one of the most moving stories or quests I've played in any of the open world games, which is there's a side quest in Horizon Forbidden West which deals with dementia. Um, you pick up the quest from talking to someone in one of the small settlements, and straight away from the way they described it, they say, look, there's an older member of the family. He sometimes wanders off and gets lost. And straight away, I thought, yeah, I think I know where this is going. And it was a character with dementia who'd gotten lost in the wilderness. But I forget the exact lines of dialogue now, but he thought he was doing something that he'd done 20 or 30 years ago. And I guess again, it's that personal connection. But a member of our family was suffering with dementia, and he died last year. Not from that, from something else. But yeah, it really got to me, you know. But it was so well handled and well written. Um, and the lady that wrote that quest was on Twitter. I think she may have been called out by one of the senior writers on Horizon and said, this fantastic story. Lots of people were saying this was really moving. Just thanking the writer directly for bringing that story to video games, because it's not a topic that's often discussed, is it? Um,
no.
so yeah, I don't look forward to True Colors, but I also, again, I can't wait to play it and have the experiences you've had.
I think personally, the way True Colours handled that moment with the shopkeeper was kind of well done because
Yeah.
when you talk to her and you could see that she's struggling to remember stuff, she keeps muttering out she's supposed to do something, like her memory's slipping. You then get the sense that Alex doesn't like her abilities. She sees them as a curse. And for Alex to then reach out, connect with her emotions just to help the shopkeeper really drove Alex's personality, that she knows that she hates this ability. She knows she's going to struggle with this emotion, but she's going to help. And it was just like that moving aspect that your character does it because she wants to help. And the idea of embracing a curse to help someone else is not a trope that they use much in storytelling, so it was good to be something different. And I think it was kind of handled really well and kind of broke my heart, to be honest. Why do we play these games?
Do you know what we're going to call this episode? We're going to call it episode 154. Let's get sad. That's what we're going to call it.
I think it's funny because I got into these type of games from a game that I don't know if you guys have ever heard of because it's got two names: Project Indigo and Fahrenheit.
Not heard of those before.
Have you not? Let me just get it up again. Project Indigo. It is a Telltale type game. How do you spell Fahrenheit? I'm dyslexic here. Wait, there we go. Found it.
Faren. I'm not sure on the rest.
So,
I'd wait for autocorrect.
Project Fahrenheit it was done by Quantic Dreams,
Oh yeah.
Oh.
and basically it was a man who commits a murder while supernaturally possessed. So, and you have to make decisions to alter the narrative to learn about, the murder you commit while you're possessed. But it's like a 2,000-page script they created for that story, and that's what got me into these games because I played that when I shouldn't. I think I was about 8 when I played it.
Oh!
So I was very naughty, but I played it
My
on the
word.
PlayStation 2 and the Xbox, and to have a game where it was so much about the choices and everything you did wrong and had impact, and there was so much weight behind it that
Yeah.
when someone told me about Life is Strange, I was like, nobody can make a game where decisions are going to feel like a gut punch. Because that was my first ever narrative game, and playing Life is Strange and getting that whole gut punch, like, oof, crikey, I did not know somebody could do this. It just blew me away that they could tell stories that way. And now I don't want to replay them. But I want to play number two. I think
don't think they're the type to replay.
I think number two may break my heart more than anything because I'm an older brother, and I did grow up as a father figure for my brother, trying to teach him how to eat, get dressed, tie his shoes. And if I have to play that role in a video game with a little child who needs to survive and has telekinetic powers, I'm going to break down. I'm not going to survive. I'm going to
Might
have
be one to
Haagen-Dazs.
avoid, mate.
I'm going to have Haagen-Dazs on tap or Ben and Jerry's.
And a few therapy sessions.
Definitely a few
Absolutely.
therapy sessions. I think, the Lucy quest in Life is Strange 1, where if you get it wrong, she jumps off the roof.
Kate Marsh.
Kate Marsh, that's the one. Getting my names mixed up. I won't lie, I played that episode on a Wednesday. I went to bed, I got up the next day, and I uninstalled Life is Strange for a week
Oh.
because I just couldn't mentally cope. I was like, nope, turn off. And I just didn't touch the game for a whole week and installed it and everything. I was just like, I think it was the hardest one to get 100% in because I had to replay it and get the best choice. But I was like,
Yeah.
no.
I've got a question about that, but Lucy's got a hand up. So Lucy, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly mention that the name of the shop in True Colors is Lethy's Flowers, which is really interesting. If you go back to the legend of Lethy, and
Oh,
I think
Lethy's
there's an
Water. Yeah.
yes, yeah. But I actually had a question for both of you. If you look at the importance of video games, especially story driven games over the past decade, when they've really come into their own, and you look at the idea of the epic hero and previous forms of literature and so on, how that's just as an example. I'm not I'm not relating it to what's going on here with the reluctant hero. But how important do you think these types of games are culturally and socially when we're giving people the opportunity to see something that's maybe representative, something that maybe exposes us to a different perspective, maybe challenges our belief systems? We think that we're set in our moral and ethical um, trajectories, but then we play this game and it kind of blows it in every direction. I mean, what do you think about games like this which specifically do that?
Do you want to take that one, Declan?
Um, yeah, because I actually have an idea on that one. Weirdly enough, I actually have an opinion for once. um, I actually kind of think these kind of games are vital, and we need more of them
Yeah,
because all of the topics they are talking about in these games are topics I've read before in literature. Like, I am a massive book nerd since the age of 9, so every topic Life Strange has covered, I've read about in some form of poetry, play, or anything. And
yeah,
that is such a restrictive medium because some people are, like me, dyslexic and struggle reading. Some people don't like books. So having a more visual, interactive narrative to tell the same stories that are, in quotation marks, taboo and supposed to post to paid pages and locked in a library, to have them in society in your face to read it kind of stops people from looking at a book in the library and going, nah, I won't touch that subject, if that makes sense.
yeah.
I'm thinking about Lucy's question, and I'm not sure how to answer it.
Well, how does the interactivity of it change things? Like the fact that you have agency and the fact that you have a proximity of people, like when Declan talked about having that relationship with Chloe and knowing Chloe and caring about Chloe versus the rest of the citizens in Arcadia
mm,
Bay. Yeah, how does that change things for you?
right. This might connect with two questions that I scribbled down, or two related questions I scribbled down a few minutes ago. Um, I won- I wonder if you could play these games two ways. Neither of them are wrong, but I know what I did, and maybe what I did will answer your question. So give me a minute to think through things and try and explain it. So I think you could sit down in front of these kinds of games and you could analyze it as a game, and you could say, right, what are the systems? What do I think the goal is? Okay, I am going to effectively game the system. I'm going to try and take the decisions um, that get the outcome I think the game wants me to have. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
yeah, that's
Um,
dangerous.
uh, Maybe. Now, the way I played it was, you ask good questions, Lucy. The way I played it was I tried. Okay, actually, Jesus, this is getting complicated. Right, I think there's probably two further ways you could. I'm thinking of Life is Strange one here, because it's the one I probably know best, and it's certainly the one that left an impression. It's one of those very small handful of games that left a lasting impression, I would say. Um, you could play it in two ways. You could say, right, I, the player, am Max. I am going to, this might be very meta, I am going to make Max take the decisions that I would take based on my moral compass. Or you could say, I am playing as Max. So I'm going to take the decisions that I think Max would take based on how I interpret her character, based on what the game's telling me about her character. Do those
Yeah.
do those three options make sense? Now, the first option is, for me, not a preferred one. That would be like looking up the IGN walkthrough and just clicking all the right dialogue options to get to the conclusion. And I think that's probably not the magic that the writers intended. So, wait, remind me of your question, Lucy. I've lost my thread.
Well, I think those are all quite valid criteria to go by. And I use all of those actually when I'm playing games. Not all the time together, but I think it checks out. What do you think is the social and cultural importance of games like this in our society where we do have the opportunity to step into other people's shoes? And we're also at a time in our society when everything is digitized and we're questioning what's important, what isn't important, how are we documenting this? Because technology changes so quickly that we're having trouble keeping up with it. And I think video games is a unique medium in that despite the amount of material that's coming out every year, it does give us the moment to stop and think and internalize the human condition, I guess. So maybe it's one of the new mediums that's come out or the new forms of technology that's come out that ties us back to being human. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting too much here and answering my own question. I don't know. But what
No,
does
no,
it mean to
you're helping
you?
me think through stuff. I'll answer it this way. Video games. I returned to gaming actually round about 4 years ago. Actually, right around now, 4 years ago, when I built my PC, the one I've got now next to me, and started, and that's after a 10+ year break. And before that break, I played Sims and I played RTS games, the Total War series. But even
Cool.
then, even 10 years ago, I played the older versions of all of those because I just didn't have the money to keep up with PC specs and gaming, minimum
Yeah.
requirements and so on. So it's only in the last 4 years that I've really gotten back into gaming, and in the last 18 months that I've started to play a much wider variety of games. Um, I think one way to look at your question is you you can treat a story like Life is Strange or any of the stories in this franchise as like a sandbox to play in.
Yeah.
A sandbox where, you know what, I am not an 18 or 19-year-old woman or girl like Max is in Life is Strange 1. I am not Captain Spirit, Chris, who's probably what, 9 or 10. I was 9 or 10 a long time ago, but
A long time
mostly I
ago, huh?
most exactly. Mostly I played with Lego and Matchbox cars. But anyway, um, but it's a way, absolutely a way of broadening your mind, of trying to have experiences that either you never had or that are now beyond you just because of basic passage of time or biology or whatever.
I hear you.
So I find them fascinating, and I would say, just on a personal note, as I've gotten older, I have become a lot more open-minded, and
Good
I
job.
challenge myself constantly, um, to keep broadening my opinion. I don't mean like I was a particularly nasty person, but I was probably just very insular and closed-minded.
Mm.
And I probably, maybe that comes with age, or do people normally become more closed-minded as they get older? I don't know. But yeah, and I think all games, but especially these very narrative-heavy ones, these stories where there is no clear right or wrong, none of the characters are perfect. There are no heroes here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There are people confronted with shitty situations trying to make the best decision, or maybe just the least worst, which
Yeah,
is often like real life. Um,
definitely.
so I mean, like I said in the intro to the episode, I'd never played this kind of graphic adventure game until 4 or 5 months ago, and I think they're awesome. And I will finish this franchise. I played Tell Me Why, which is again by Don't Nod, but it's its own standalone story, and I will be looking out for others in the future. I think they're great. I enjoy my more complex games. I enjoy parkouring off of rooftops. But yeah, these stories have really got something.
Yeah.
That may not be a great answer, but it's probably the best answer I can give.
No, it's wonderful. I think your answer is probably what a lot of developers are aspiring to achieve when they put their heart and soul into these pieces of art, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I've got a playlist of various Life is Strange story analyses, critiques, character analyses to listen to on many future dog walks, because I do like finding a good video essay. Helps you sort of
Yeah.
understand and whatever. I found that
Yeah.
after playing The Last of Us Part 2, I
Oh,
needed some catharsis, and I found some fantastic video essays, which were great to help sort of come to terms with the characters, the stories, the motivations, the morality, and so on. So yeah, definitely the same for some of these stories.
yeah.
I was
They
going to
are
ask you both
great.
the same, actually, particularly for Declan, who's 100%ed Life is Strange. Did you set out to do that? So did you look up that you need to take certain decisions at certain points, or did you just play the game naturally, let's say, and you gradually earned those achievements through doing that?
Um, First playthrough was naturally, but when I play those type of games, because like I said, I started with Project Indigo, which Quantic Dreams, I knew how I played that I would search every corner of the game and I would do every single prompt because I knew if it was going to be like one of those interactive games that a conversation with an NPC that you would ignore because it's not got a quest point could drastically affect the story. So on my first natural playthrough, I think I was at 98% because I still had, some of those other choices to make that I didn't make. But I found all the collectibles and all the little things because when you play an interactive story, you don't go and ho for the story, you open the world and
Yeah,
you see what you can find.
yeah. All right. Right at the start of the episode, Declan, you said that this type of storytelling, you felt there was connections there to Assassin's Creed, where we explore an ancestor's memories. Tell us more.
Is this where I'm going to get in trouble with the community?
Oh, undoubtedly.
I think essentially where I was trying to go with it is Assassin's Creed games are just open and shut. You do basic open worldy linear stuff. But when you look closer at the comics and the stories, they're very much single linear. There's no choices, there's no gameplay mechanics. So, I'm going to use a recent book that me and you've both read, James, Magnus Conspiracy. That sort of
Yeah,
story could be played in a Life is Strange, if that makes sense. That linear ancestor story, you could tell a story where an ancestor called Bob, for example, his first name came to the head, watches the whole assassin clan get destroyed. And your choices through the whole narrative is to rebuild the Brotherhood. But do you build it by following the creed, following the tenets, and going away up that way? Or do you build it by doing whatever you want for vengeance? And you could have those interactive story moments that could feel meaningful and impactful. I kind of think if you could tell the story right, but it probably wouldn't be a game the community would enjoy because there'd be no parkour or jumping off rooftops. It'd be more an ancestor's story as they learn to survive being an assassin, if that makes sense.
it does. I think there's a way you could do it that obviously there are some fans who are more relaxed. I think I'm one of them. And there are some who like that strict genetic memory construct. But I think there's a way you could do what you're saying that would satisfy both. And that would be to have two protagonists that survive, and one chooses a path of revenge and one chooses a path of peace, or whatever the two kind of routes are. And you play them both, one after the other. So you get the full experience, but it gives you two different styles of gameplay, two different styles of, completing the story. You could choose just to do one, and then move on, but then you could go back and play the other. That might work. I am available for game design, of course, to be hired. So that would be a terrible idea.
No, I think it would be great.
There you are, Declan. We're sold.
I'm sold. I think it was also, if we can touch briefly on it, because I do want to do a bigger episode dedicated to it. But I think it was telling me why that actually has more of a impact to how Assassin's Creed could tell stories than anything. Because of the way Tell Me Why it uses memories for its narrative.
Yeah, that was fascinating. I just finished playing that a few weeks ago. It didn't grab me the same as Life is Strange. It's definitely a more mature. Is that really fair? It's got a different tone. That's the fairest thing to say. It's a shorter story, but it's fantastic. Have you played it, Lucy?
No, I've just I
Oh,
played the first episode or chapter and
yes.
then read ahead.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's got a really fascinating mystery, and how that mystery is uncovered evolves over the 3 chapters. And like you say, Declan, it hinges at the center in the two twins having different recollections of key events. People don't remember things consistently. So what do you think? How would you use that in an Assassin's Creed format?
Do I have to answer?
Yep.
I'm going to get in trouble again.
Yeah, but we're shining the bright light on you now. You need to tell us.
It's something that I've been arguing internally about since, I'm going to say Syndicate was when I first came to the idea. But Assassin's Creed, I really hate you put me on the spot. Assassin's Creed
You
plays
can do
too
it, Declan.
safe. Right, okay. Assassin's Creed, in my opinion, plays too safe with memories.
Okay.
It tells memories as fact. There's no cultural influence. There's no emotional influence. They are fact. It happened, move on. But as Valhalla's shown, and it has shown the greatest rift in the community, people don't like the idea of how if someone remembers a past life through a mythological lens, that's wrong because it has to have truth. But with how Life is Strange, how True Tell Me Why works is there is a lot of points where they see this shadow figure, this hunter that's coming after them, and it's supernatural, it's dark, but that's emotion, that's grief, that's sadness. Why can't Assassin's Creed not use that? As something I've argued, you can have a story where your ancestors saw a Templar burn your parents' house down, but you see it as a ghost. Why can that not be played that in your
Declan,
memory you see a ghost?
do you know what you might be describing there?
What?
The djinn.
Yes, see, that is where I've always tried to come across with Mirage. That whole fact of just because that mythological lens is there doesn't mean it's not an appropriate story tool. Yeah, you do need something to unravel it, but tell me why, when you figure that out yourself as a player, the game doesn't tell you it's an emotion. The game doesn't hold your hand and say, "Yep,
Yeah, that's true.
that's what it is." You know yourself that it's an emotion, and that's something I feel Assassin's Creed could play on. The fact of a memory is tainted by an emotion, and it'll be our choice as a player to deduce that. And you can, if games that Tell Me Why and Life is Strange can help give you the medium to deduce certain philosophical points, I believe Assassin's Creed can do the same. But it's the
It
same
does.
with my argument with Odyssey and Tell Me Why again. Why can't you have played one playthrough as Cassandra, and every memory you play is how Cassandra saw it. But then you can play as Alexios as Diamos, and every memory he encounters is opposite to what Cassandra saw. So you get both stories intertwined, but everyone sees them different. And Tammy White does that fantastically because the brother has anger towards his mom, so he sees the memory one way, but the sister is more relaxed and she sees it different. That can play heavily in Assassin's Creed, a Templar story where someone's big headed arrogantness towards a Templar's blind hatred shows a memory where a Templar doing something as simple as healing a sick kid is wrong, is evil, it's horrible, so you have to kill him. But if you play as the character where they're a bit more level headed, they search for the clues, they see that actually this Templar wants is healing sick kids. It's not a bad act. Let's not take him down. You know what I mean? It's that integrate thought process Assassin's Creed doesn't do yet, but they should try it.
Yeah.
And I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense. Hey, Lucy, if you, please follow up if you want to.
Well, I think Declan just described it beautifully, actually, the way he laid it out. It would be difficult to do gameplay wise in terms of balancing the stories and keeping the pacing going. But I mean, why can't it be possible? But I think as well, the whole idea of mythology itself, just going back to that a bit, is a little bit disheartening to me that the community throws its arms up in despair over it, because mythology isn't something that we necessarily have to take literally, especially these days. It's something that helps us come to terms, contextualize, process our own emotions and relationship with life. And that is one of the great strengths of mythology, why we have those stories. And I would recommend to a lot of people, of course, this is a very Western biased book, and it doesn't give you the full scope of the rest of the world. It can be reductive in that way, but I would recommend people to read The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. And he refers to monocultural events like Star Wars and how they present the archetypal hero, and how that is culturally important to us to have this myth, this collective ethos to develop together. And I think video games are a great way to play on that. So when people are discarding mythology as these fairy tales with monsters, there's so much more to it than that. And I think Declan summed it up beautifully, how a person's traumatic experience, how their grief could be manifested in the form of a monster. And we could even argue that sometimes we struggle so much today because we don't have those stories as present. But video games bring us back to that. And actually, there's a really wonderful game. I haven't played through it yet, called Kasima Ingatuna. And this focuses on the folk tales of the indigenous peoples in Alaska. And they actually, to develop this game, went to the elders in the village and spoke with them, because there's this real fear that these oral traditions are being lost. And this is one medium that, okay, it's not the same, it doesn't carry the same resonance as it would have a long time ago, but video games as a medium can take that form and bring new life to it and introduce it to whole generations of people all around the world. So I think mythology gets a really bad rap. I think we all need to pay a little bit more attention to it, and we can learn a lot of good life lessons from it.
Well, look, I'm not going to get in trouble with the community. Huzzah! See, this is kind of why I actually did want to talk about Life is Strange and Tell Me Why. Because these games do show that cultural influence in those stories, and not a lot of people get to see them because
Yeah.
I only discover them because of books, and you shouldn't have to just discover something by going to a library. You should be able to go home on your sofa and switch on a game and have them emotions and learn about them, because a game shouldn't just be about mindlessly turning yourself off and mashing buttons or It shouldn't
Yeah.
just be about focusing on how to build a house or a strategy. It should also be about feeling pain, love, and life. And maybe Life is Strange is those games that make you feel truly human because it makes you feel sadness, it makes you feel happiness, and it breaks your goddamn heart. But
Yes.
why shouldn't you have your heart broken now and then? Because that's life.
Yeah.
And it's better a video game breaks your heart than something real. At least with a
Yeah.
video game, you can turn it off and vow to never return.
Crawl into a corner wailing for a little
Exactly.
while. Yeah.
Just uninstall the game, put it in a lockbox, and throw it in a corner.
You know, I've just had a bit of a dark thought. I don't know whether this is a good thought or not.
Great.
Do you wonder if going through these stories and experiencing these strong emotions, they can almost be preparation for experiencing those emotions in real life? I don't know. I don't even know if there's an answer to that, but maybe not. But
That's ominous.
I just think, it's make believe. Like I said earlier, it's a sandbox that you play in, but ultimately, it is a game. It's a story. You can walk away, but they can help you to meet characters, go through situations that you wouldn't see on a regular day. So I wonder if there's something there. I don't know. Just
I
popped into my head.
I will have to agree that yes, there is something there.
Okay.
Something I don't really talk about much because it's just something you don't talk about. But
Yeah.
I do suffer from mental health problems and have done for 12 years now. But Life is Strange has helped me understand certain emotions. When you have depression, anxiety, you struggle with how to regulate emotions and how to live. And playing Life is Strange and feeling them emotions in a controlled environment, I do believe that they've helped me understand what certain emotions are and how they can help me in life, which is very weird because I've only ever had to deal with sadness and anger through real life events and not knowing how to control them. So having a visual medium where I can control them kind of gives me preparation on how to help myself when I'm older.
Interesting. I don't want this to sound flippant, but it's almost like a prescription. I'm going to prescribe that you. I know it sounds silly, but I can't think of a better way to explain it. But I'm going to prescribe that you experience this story and these characters' emotions because they will help you prepare for your own. Okay. I thought I was maybe just I'd gone a bit crazy there, Declan. But what you've said kind of suggests that yeah, that can happen um, with the right game and good storytelling and so on.
Everything
Over.
can help. But
True, true. Lucy,
there's
you've got your hand up. What did you want to say?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big thing to talk about, Declan. So solidarity with you on that. But I think as well, James, what you talked about and questioning that, you've just summed up what a lot of people would argue the sole function of art is, right? Art is our response to life, how we deal with life, how we process life, how we reveal the beautiful and the terrible. And
Mm,
I think that's especially important these days when we're seeing arts programs being cut. We see a class system which has never really gone away. We're seeing a lot of elitism increase in art as it's becoming more difficult for people from underprivileged communities to access the arts. And we're seeing more people. We're seeing the humanities get knocked out of more and more things. We're seeing critical thinking being clamped down on, and we're really losing touch with arts in a lot of ways. And then we have video games, and that's something that if you're able to access, it brings you right back into that world, and it's so vital because right now it's something that um, connects us to each other, so we can discuss these things. And that is the function of art, is to bring us all together, is to remind us of what it is like to be human and what is so beautiful about being human. So it's just serving art's purpose, I would argue.
well, do you know that feels like a good note to end the conversation? Because I don't think we can say it better than that. Video games as art, video games as emotional experiences. What do you think, Declan?
I agree. I think Lucy has summed it up perfectly, and
Yeah.
it's really good to actually talk about these games because they're a medium that's not really talked about much, and a medium that I think more developers should pop up and try and make. And I would buy the hell out of them.
Yeah. Do you know, it's a
Yeah.
funny thing. I'll just say, like, I not in the last few weeks because there's been a lot going on with work and other projects, but I do tend to tweet a fair bit about games that I am playing and what I think of them and all the rest of it. It's always the Life is Strange updates and tweets that get the most interaction, the most people saying, I played it, I loved it, or generally, hold on to your heart, all that sort of stuff. These games, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of self selection of demographics there, I have no idea, but these games seem to leave an impression on people more than some of the other stuff I play. Which I just find interesting, from a little anecdotal point of view. So we've kind of run through a little bit, a very, very fast journey through the Life is Strange franchise. We've chatted a little bit about Tell Me Why. Any other final thoughts, Declan?
No, I think we've covered everything.
All right. Lucy, where can people find you, follow you?
Usually
Follow
you're
you
giving me a hard
virtually, not
time, James.
physically, because that's weird.
Thank you. Oh, they'd soon run in the opposite direction, I assure you. But um, that's really kind of you to do. It's not very active right now because I'm working on a writing course. But if you go to fetchquestjourneys.com, and that's where I have a lot of right now a project on poetry that's inspired by experiences in video games, and I also cover some of the grueling moral and ethical dilemmas that we
Mm,
face in video games. And there's a couple Life is Strange posts on there, or there's one actually, I'm sorry, on there as well.
very good. Thank you very much. Well, Declan, do you want to do your epic closing of the show?
I love my wrap ups. It's like Christmas wrapping up everything. So, I thank everyone for listening to this episode. These off topic ones are very important because, as you can see, I have a lot of passion for these games, so does James. And Lucy is also a great guest to talk. And as we do these off topic ones in the future, we will be getting community people involved, just as we do with Assassin's Creed. So, nothing will change. It'll just be random games that are just as epic. And I have a lot of games to discuss in our little backlog of catalogs. So, thank you everyone for joining. If you want to discuss your feelings about Life is Strange, you can email us at assassinscreed@gmail.com. Or if you also want to tweet us about suggestions for games you want to talk about or you'd like us to talk about, you can on at AC Let's Talk on Twitter and at James Tilliquid. And we'll see you all next week.
See you soon.
See y'all.
Nice. And I forgot to click stop. Wait, I'm going to click stop now. This will be the proper professional ending of the show.